Welcome to XRT. It's so nice to have you here, man.
Glad to be here.
Well, that song you just played, that's a song that's been with you for a long, long time, Railroad Boy.
I learned that song when I was 14 years old. It's about 100 years old, that song. It's an old folk song that when I was a kid, I used to sneak into this folk club and see these singer-songwriters and folk musicians play, and became friends with a bunch of them. Some of them took me under their wing, and that's one of the songs that they showed me when I was a kid, and it just kind of stayed with me. And then a few years ago, when we were making the Government Mule record By a Thread, we somehow came up with the idea of making it a rock song, which we did, and then now, of course, that version was back kind of more like I learned it.
So that had to be one of the first songs you ever learned, going back that
I
far,
started playing
right?
when I was 12, so yeah, it was pretty early on.
It's pretty cool that a song like that could be with you for all those years, and then you could sort of, reinvent it in a way with the band. That's kind of
Yeah,
cool.
and I think most of them probably wouldn't work that way. That one seemed to be unique in that way, and we added some of the kind of rock riffs and stuff that weren't part of the original song, but a lot of it was just the way I remember hearing it when I was a kid, and I wanted to kind of recapture that.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to see you again, man. Last time we saw each other was at Bonnaroo,
Yes.
which we've seen each other there more than a few times. You've played at Bonnaroo probably more than anyone else. I think that you hold the record.
I was at the first Bonnaroo and almost everyone since. I think I've missed a couple, 2
Yeah.
or 3 here and there, but I make up for it by playing with 4 or 5 different bands each
Well,
time I'm there. So.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We come back from Bonnaroo and we have to go to bed for like 3 days because we need to recover. You, on the other hand, leave.
On the road.
You leave Bonnaroo and then you go with Government Mule and you start touring and you end up in Europe and then you go on the road with the Jerry Garcia Symphony Celebration where you're doing Jerry Garcia songs with a symphonic orchestra.
What a trip that was.
I bet.
that
We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Well, I had gotten a call from the people that represent the Jerry Garcia estate saying that they had this idea about doing Jerry's music with a symphony, and was I interested in being the first guest artist? And I said, absolutely, I would love to do that. It's something that I've thought about as far as working with an orchestra all my life, but it was always like, yeah, down the road somewhere I'll do that. And when this came about, I was like, no, I think this is the right time.
Now, you've been thinking about working with a symphony orchestra, but was it with Grateful Dead songs?
This particular thing, I had never thought of that before.
Yeah, right.
Until they planted that seed, I just thought one of these days I'll do something with a symphony. I wasn't even sure that it would be a tour or an entire concert, maybe one song, who knows. But it was a wonderful opportunity. And so the first thing I did was start narrowing down this vast catalog to songs not only that I wanted to do with the symphony, but ones that I thought would make the most sense with a symphony.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit at
Yeah.
Bonnaroo, and we talked about how classical music is fairly rigid. I mean, it is what it is. Not a lot of room for improvisation, and a lot of that
Yes.
older stuff, but with Grateful Dead music, and it's certainly the way you play, it can go anywhere. So how did that work with an orchestra?
Well, you know what we did is when I first started talking to the arrangers, I made it an issue that we wanted to honor the spirit of improvisation and honor the spirit of the Grateful Dead, and not just do symphonic interpretations of the songs. So we did that in 3 ways. One way was to have sections during the night where the orchestra would stop playing and the electric band would improvise for a while, and then on cue the orchestra would come back in. Another way was there would be times when the orchestra was reading charts but the band was improvising, so we were merging those 2 worlds together. And then the weirdest way, I think, was I took some recordings of the Grateful Dead. As an example, I took this recording of Dark Star from 1968 and sent it to the arranger, and he took about a 5-minute section where they were just improvising and assigned it to the orchestra and made it a symphonic piece. So what was originally improvisation was now orchestrated music, and that was really bizarre.
So were there, did you give the orchestra an opportunity to do long tunings and Space Jam or anything like that?
I tried to encourage that, but we got about halfway there. You know, getting them to play Dark Star was a challenge in itself,
Right.
because there were no repeating patterns for the first 5 minutes or so. I'm sure they're scratching their heads like, who wrote this? It's like, nobody. This was a jam, and you guys are now reading it off of a piece of paper.
Wow.
But
That's
it was
pretty cool.
wonderful. I thought it was the perfect way to start the show, which eventually kind of segued into Birdsong, and the version of Birdsong that I sent the arranger, who was also the same arranger who's a friend of mine, Stephen Bernstein. I sent him a version of Birdsong with Branford Marsalis playing with the band. So a lot of what the orchestra was playing was what Branford originally improvised off the top of his head.
Wow. That's pretty great. Do you have plans to continue this, like to do it again, or is that just a
I would
one-time
love to do
shot?
it again. We don't have any plans, and I think the plan is to do it again with some different artists and stuff, but it would it'd be okay with me if we did more.
Well, that's pretty cool. So you're here in Chicago with the Allman Brothers Band.
Yes.
Wow, that goes back a ways. You've been a big part of that band.
25 years.
Yeah, right. And you know,
I'm only 30.
you being, you know, you more than likely grew up listening to Allman Brothers Band's records,
Oh,
as
yeah.
we all did.
Yeah, I was a
And
big
you knew
fan.
those records inside and out, and then to have an opportunity to suddenly be in the band with your relationship with Dickie, now you're in the band, right? And you've been in the band for all these years. So when you play with the Allman Brothers and with the Dead too, do you try to replicate what you know, what you've heard, or do you sort of, you know, in your own style, try to fit in with what the band is doing?
I try to honor the spirit of the music, but I think one of the best ways to honor that is by being myself as someone who's very influenced by that music. So from moment to moment, I may choose to do it a little more or a little less like the way I heard it growing up. But I think since I studied that music so much growing up, that I'm in a good position to be able to do that. They would never expect me to play more like Duane Allman or less like Duane Allman, or the same with the Dead, to play more or less like Jerry Garcia.